Oh, but here's the thing, right? So you're a consumer, you're a buyer, you're a home buyer. And you go into an offer with the expectation that, and I'm trying to make this up as we speak, right? So bear with me, right? So you're a homeowner and you're going in with the expectation that the seller, and the seller equals the seller and or the listing agent, right? The selling party is going to contribute.
Everybody, Robert Kenneth Morillo, PA, broker associate with Compass, Florida, license number BK3373543. What's going on, John?
Good morning, John Sepulveda, MLS 1309244. Ready for another day. What's this?
Episode number 20.
20. Wow.
It is Friday.
In a month? Wow. That's cool.
Yep.
It's going by fast.
Making progress.
Yeah.
It is Friday, Financial Fridays. You know, we have the countdown going on. 26 days until May 10th?
May 10th. So yesterday it was funny how we talked yesterday, right? They said next month, they're going to be like, the headlines are going to be, oh my God, the inflation's going down. What a surprise. So yesterday, the March PPI report came out.
Okay.
Which is the Producer Price Index.
Producer Price Index.
Correct. The other one is the C.
Consumer.
This is P, Producer. So this is for like wholesalers, right? Okay. So this is a survey that they do for the cost for wholesalers, producers, with the cost of producers, right? So if their costs go up, if the wholesalers' costs go up, that means the consumers' costs go up, usually, right? They're kind of tied together. When the producer cost goes down, it does not always necessarily mean that consumer goes down, because they don't always extend that pricing onto the consumers.
Because they see, all right, if people are willing to pay this price, we already brought it up. We don't have to bring it back down. We could just
correct.
Take advantage of these profit margins.
Which was part of my train of thought when I decided to go full electric on my vehicles, because that got part of the reasoning, right? They got us to $5 a gallon for whatever gas was the peak. They got us there. We kind of survived. They kept us there, and then they brought it down, right? So now they know that we're okay. Like now they know that 350 is okay. Like people are happy because it's lower. Yeah, 350 is low. Last time reduced significantly. Yeah, but it was it was $1.50, whatever it was. So they got us accustomed to that price, and that's where it's going to stay. We're not going. I don't think we're going back down unless something.
That's a good catchphrase for inflation is that high is the new low.
Yeah. Expensive is the new cheap.
That's gonna be the name of this episode. High is the new low.
High is the new low. Yeah. Expensive is the new cheap.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's insane. So I mean, that's how, So anyway, so the PPI came out yesterday, and again, it's not rocket science. It's just data, right? It's just the numbers are starting to track, and there's if you look at the charts of historical charts, the PPI and the CPI report, they're correlated. They're definitely correlated, and the PPI is a leading indicator of what's to come, and historically that has been the case, right? So now the PPI went down suddenly, right? It just went down, and the headline, I went down. I finished after we finished recording yesterday, and did some stuff here in the office, and then I went downstairs to get some coffee, turned the TV on, and the number had come out, and that was the first headline. Oh my God, what a surprise. Inflation seems to be under control, or seems to be going down, something like that. So the numbers are, I gotta write them down, because I was at the beginning, I was doing it from memory, but there's too many numbers and I don't want to give you the wrong information. So the Producer Price Index, the headline number, the reading went down from 4.9%, which was the revised report from last month, this month went to 2.7%.
Oh, wow.
So you see,
Essentially over 2 points.
you see, but we had that conversation yesterday. It's going to go down 2 points in the CPI when it comes out. But you see, you already knew about that, and yet your reactions are saying, "Oh wow, like that's exactly what's going to happen." So what did it do yesterday? It brought the stock market, like people like, "Oh, the inflation's coming down. The Fed's going to stop hiking rates. Oh, okay, it's over. You know, the pivot is coming." Like that's sort of what that fuels that kind of data from the people that are not really paying attention. So that just indicates that, again, just data. The headline, the number, the core, which takes out, again, just like the CPI, they take out energy and housing costs. It fell it fell 0.1%, and they were expecting a gain of 0.2%. So they were expecting the core to go up, and it actually went down slightly, but it went down. And then let's see, where is my note here? If the core inflation declined from 4.4 to 3.4%. So this is inflation that takes out housing and energy costs. Right, because those are lagging indicators that are higher, so they skew the numbers. So they do it with housing costs and without housing and energy costs. So without housing and energy costs, core inflation declined from 4.4% to 3.4%. Again, on the down, and the trend is, so that should follow, right? All the rest of the reports that start coming should start seeing that trend. And the May 10th should definitely, on the consumer price, you should definitely see a drop, perhaps just as big, perhaps, a couple of points should be anyway, right? Based on all the data and all the math. So that should be, be like when that number comes out, like the headline is going to be, oh my God, the Fed, like, over tighten, they're definitely stopping. They'll definitely do another. And right now the market, yesterday was 69% odds that the Fed does the 25 basis point hike at the next meeting. The market's sort of betting. This a fraction of the market that's saying he's going to stop, but their talk says there's going to be, and that one might be the one that breaks. Like that might be the one that like really like does the damage. That extra rate hike that's coming. That might be it.
Well,
and there's really, like, if you look at the data, right? I mean, if you look at all the data, right? If you just look at data and do nothing else, and compare the charts and compare the numbers, and look at this report from yesterday, right? It's just everything is kind of leading to that. Inflation's coming down. I mean, it's coming down. You gotta let it breathe. You gotta let it do.
I mean, it sounds hopeful, right? But
well, it sounds. See, the problem is that it sounds very hopeful, right? Inflation's going down. The problem is that the method to get there is what's going to cause a problem, right? Because the rate hikes have been multiple and have been fast. It's basically been a year of, hike.
Yeah.
But it's like if you, I don't know, I mean, if you go to the gym, right? And I start lifting weights, and
you're trying to push your
I hit it
limit
hard, like I
fast.
pump it, and I do it. Like I pump it like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Like I pump it and I go over the limit and I just go all out. And I wake up Saturday morning and I will look at myself in the mirror, and no, that I'm expecting.
Okay.
I've been working it so hard. I've been doing it so hard. I want to see the six pack, and the definition. And on Saturday morning, it's not going to be there. It's just a week. It's not going to happen. It's just not enough time to do it. Kind of, if you follow my crazy logic,
I see what you're saying. You want to see the results quickly.
They're trying to see,
but it's just not. You got to let it compound over time.
Because from 9.2% to 2%, that's just too much in a year. You're just not going to do it. Number one. Number two, we've already talked about this 2%, unicorn that Janet Yellen kind of came up with. It's a unicorn. not really a thing.
So essentially, I mean, you know, human behavior, we want instant gratification. And it's like things are more reactive than proactive.
Well, I mean, I think it's part of that. I think part of it is he screwed up. The Fed has screwed up. Powell, and then the whole Fed, they've screwed up. They completely botched this.
Mhm.
There's just no other really answer to it. You know what I mean? There's just no other explanation. They
Yeah.
kind of they botched it. They fell asleep at the wheel. The signs have been there. This is not a secret. Like it's not. But at the beginning, when they were being warned about you're doing too much,
And that's what I mean when I say we're being reactive, not proactive, because we're reacting to the consequences of those decisions instead of being proactive. When you see the signs, you know, if there's a fork in the road, you either go left or you go right. You don't ignore it and go straight. And it seems like they've
but
been
they
ignoring it and going straight.
they ignored it exactly because they just oh we gotta cut the rates. That's it. Inflation 2%. You know, and they just ignored all the signs and they've been saying no inflation, no inflation, no inflation.
Mhm.
Then it's transitory. Then it's soft landing. Then
Mhm.
it's so last month's report. We talked about this already. The expected GDP number is 0.4%,
Mhm.
right? So, and last month, I mean, we were at what was it? I don't even remember now. We got to go back. 2.8, I think it's the revised figure that we just the GDP in the first quarter.
Yeah.
It was 3.2, and I think they revised it to 2.8. I forget what it was, but let's forget about the revision. 3.2.
Mhm.
Let's use that number, like the 3.2. Forget about the revision. But the Fed in their meetings, they announced that they expect final GDP to be 0.4. So to get from 3.2 to 0.4, it means you have to have negative numbers in order to equal that, right? Because you're reducing, right?
Mhm.
If it's at 3.2 now, and the Fed is saying at the end of the year is going to be 0.4. Well, to get from 3.2 to 0.4, you have to subtract them, right? And you got a number. And it's right. You have to subtract 3.2 from 0.4. And that
Yeah.
is what the total GDP is going to be combined for the final 3 quarters of the year. And when you add all 4 quarters together, plus or minus, your final number is going to be 0.4. And our starting number is 3.2. And the supposed, and I say supposed because that has changed with this administration, the definition of a recession has always been 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP.
2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP.
Correct.
And and typically it doesn't really hit the news or awareness until after the recession has kind of already passed, right? Or like after it's already started.
Correct. That's when they announce we have a recession. But again, the technical definition to be in a recession, it's 2 quarters, 2 consecutive quarters in a row. You know, obviously consecutive of negative GDP growth, and that has always been the case as long as they kind of track that. Except current administration last year, they said, well, not really. It's not really 2 negative quarters in a row. Yeah, we had 2 negative quarters in a row, but employment is really good and it's booming. So it's really, they kind of changed the definition. I mean, they literally did that live, like on TV, and people were like, oh, right, you know,
Eating it up.
okay. So, but the Fed announced in his report that the end of the year is 0.4, right? So the only math there, the only possible math formula to get to from 3.2 first quarter to 0.4 at final number in a year after 4 quarters is there's got to be some negative numbers on the way to get to 0.4, right? So if you have negative numbers on the way and you only have 3 quarters left, right? That was quarter 1 report. You only have 3 quarters left. We're going to lose 2.8, right? From 3.2 to 0.4. There has to be some negative numbers there. And probably 2 quarters in a row, if not all 3 quarters, that there's going to be negative numbers to get to 0.4. You follow me? So the Fed in his report last month said, he didn't say there's going to be a recession, but the data, the numbers say there's a recession. You follow me? But
Yeah.
so
Like it's like being in denial.
Correct. Well, who's on first? Who's on first? Because then they say the numbers say the report that they hand out to people says there's going to be a recession, but then their mouths say, "Oh no, we're fine. Under transitory, soft landing, no recession, we're good, and economy's booming." No, it's not booming. There's a problem. So you have a mixed message coming at people, and you're dealing with, or they're dealing with something that has really never happened. Like they're dealing with this situation like they dealt with it in the 70s. Because in the 70s it worked, right? So what happened in the 70s, that inflation started, and this is just from reading, right? I don't, obviously I didn't live in the 70s, so I don't have the full experience of, to know, but from reading, it's the inflation started, oil prices were up, there's restriction in oil, inflation, blah, blah, blah. They started hiking and they stopped hiking and they reversed. And when they reversed, the Fed at the time, when reversed, it came back and the inflation came back stronger. Like it came back much harder. So that kind of, there's a precedent there, right? So current chairman kind of did the same thing, right? They were rising. If you remember, in 2018, the rates went up. If you remember, like in 2018, the end of 2018, they were hiking rates because inflation. They're trying to keep inflation under control, and we got to like, I want to say high fours, if I remember correctly. Like we were so low, like we were really low, and then they kind of hiked, and we kind of got up to the high fours. High fours, right? Now back then I wasn't really paying attention. I didn't have this, I wasn't into this kind of thing I'm in now with the information and reading, and so I was just like everybody is right now, for the most part, really unaware. Rates went up. I really wasn't following it to tell you how we got there, right? As I can tell you this time how we're at, right? So
and I mean, real estate was busy appreciating.
Yeah, things were appreciating. The market was crazy, but they were hiking the rates, and he was trying to. But then he had flipped. And so again, and I'm just kind of paraphrasing because I don't have the whole kind of story, and I wasn't really prepared to talk about it. So he flipped, and the inflation obviously came back up again. You got the pandemic, kind of everything got through, just kind of got thrown in there, and inflation went back up again. So he has a fear of, there seems to be, right? That's what analysts say, right? He has a fear of like stopping too quickly and taking his foot off the gas too quickly and letting the inflation come back and creep up on again. So he seems to be determined this time, we're going to get to 2% no matter what, and there's going to be pain. I mean, that's just and I keep on saying that because he has really pretty much said that every single press conference. It's in some form or another, he has said the words, there's going to be pain.
In other words, brace yourselves.
To the economy, yes. Yeah. I mean, there's going to be pain. And how is there pain? There has to be, to bring inflation down, you pretty much shut off access to capital, which he's been doing, and unemployment goes up, which he has not managed to do yet.
Yeah.
At least the numbers are not saying that, right? So what's happening? They're looking at the data, but they're looking at the historical data. They're looking at the numbers that always happen, right? But we talked about this at some point already. This is a different market. Like this is a different world. The numbers are skewed because the reports are based on data, analysis and collection. Based on the model that's always been there, go to college, get a job, work forever in your company so you can get your pension and you can retire and live happily ever after, right? That's kind of the dream that they sold us, right? So
yeah,
that kind of ideology is still what leads the data gathering part of these reports and these surveys.
Do you think a lot more people are being more, I mean, clearly there's a lot more creativity going on as far as ways to create income. But I think it has become very well known, like the damage that student loans have done, do you think people have been staying away from student loans and going to
100%.
college?
100%. Kids are
There's been
stopping,
an influx of
there's kids are stopping to, kids are not going to school. The young kids, like my son's generation, my son's 19.
Mhm.
That generation, there's, they're not, we don't need school, we don't need school. Like, this is a waste of money. It's a waste. I mean, it became a waste of money.
Yeah.
You go to
Mhm.
college and you pay $90,000 to study art history. Nothing wrong with art history. I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Mhm.
However,
You can hardly capitalize.
well, I mean, it's been my experience. I'm 51 years old. I kind of, I'm not that old, but I'm no spring chicken. But I've learned one thing, right? When you have a family and when you sit down to eat and you put the plate on the table, it's really, really good and helpful that there's food on top of the plate, not just the plate. You know what I mean? It's really helpful. Like, it helps a lot.
Nutrition.
Well, I'm serious, man. And I mean,
it really helps a lot when there's
and you have some of these. I mean, and you got some of these, these young, people that are going to college and getting into this debt. Just related to that multi-generational thing we're talking about yesterday, right? Because the thing is, you turn 18, you go to college, you leave the house, you turn 18, you leave the house. It's not really about an education. It's more about getting out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
You got these kids, they're going to the schools, they pay, 80, 70, I mean, a state school is $50,000-$60,000 a year. That's insane. 4 years, $200,000 college, loan that for 4 years of college at a public university on a, art history major.
Mm-hmm.
Again, nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's perfect. You can art, great. But however, how do you feed your family when art history degree? I mean, yes, there's people who work in that field, but how many really job openings are in the art history field? So these decisions of these kids, because they're used to this, the system has always been go to college, get a job,
prepare for college. You start preparing for college,
you get a job, and you get a good job with a pension, and you work in the same company for the rest of your life, and you do that, and then, but you don't hear that anymore. There's like, you don't really. How many people have you met recently that have worked in their job for the past 20 years?
No, not often.
You don't see that.
The most common story, and it might be because of who we're surrounding ourselves with now, right? Now, other agents, other people in our industries, the story is, oh, I was corporate and then I wanted to go off and venture off into my own thing. So because people are caring more about what their happiness is, their passions, their obsessions, really.
Yeah. And the pandemic added to that, like made it more clear to people, like, well, wait a minute, what am I doing here? Like, and then people started switching. So the job, and that's a number that's thrown out there. And I don't know, I'll look it up and if I remember and throw it out at some point, what the labor participation rate is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's not the unemployment rate, right? Unemployment rate is how many people are looking for job and how many jobs are available, right? And then that's the number, and that's the unemployment rate. That's how many people are unemployed. But that figure is skewed because the labor participation, the amount of people looking for job or participating in the labor force has reduced. And now, what is the labor force? The labor force is W-2 employees.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they measure the labor force. You know what I mean? Because they don't do those surveys. They don't count
contractors
in those surveys, right? They don't, because the realtors they're independent contractors, right? Mm-hmm. Just like they don't count all the people that have side hustles. I mean, how many people are living off a side hustle right now? How many people live off Uber and Lyft?
Yeah.
I mean, how many?
And those are considered independent contractors.
They're independent contractors. I mean, how many people have? I know plenty of people, plenty of people that left their job and full time. During the pandemic, that kind of forced them. It wasn't planned. Wherever they were working shut down in the pandemic, and they switched to the rideshare platforms or the food delivery platform, and they're making the same amount of money or more that they were making at a job working hourly, and now they're independent contractors. Kind of people like that. I mean, so but you have to look at the data, right? If you're going to look at the numbers, you have to take that into consideration, because otherwise you're looking at the wrong data, and you're getting your output is incorrect because the input is incorrect. And that's where we're at. Like that's the where we find ourselves. That's why, we joke and and hopefully somebody at some point sees this thing and they know who's on first, so they take the time to go watch who's on first, because you watch the clip and you understand what that means.
Because I got a background in baseball, so it was very humorous to me.
And you understand how crazy it is, that conversation that they had. But that's what we're having. I mean, that's literally the conversation that these people are having up there. Like, yeah, it's great. Yeah. Silicon Valley Bank. Yeah. But they were diverse and inclusive.
Yeah.
Number one, they were diverse and inclusive, but $219 billion that they had in deposits, poof, disappeared. But they were diverse and inclusive, and that's the important thing, right? It doesn't matter because the truth of the matter is, what they really caused was a major, that's going to come back in history, and you're going to see that decision by the administration as something that could come back and bite them in the ass. Just because they opened up the can of worms of saying, well, we'll take care of your deposits that's safe, and they went against sort of the tide. Because that could open up a box of Pandora down the road for other banks that need to get the same thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is that in order for the other banks to get the same thing, at the end of the day, they need to print more money, number one, which is going to hurt all the stuff that they've been doing. And number two, you and I are going to end up paying for that, as we always do.
Now, is there a way to, let's just say a bank collapses, get everybody's money back, get them paid back, and just shut the bank down completely and not bail the bank out? Or you have to, in order to return everybody's money, the bank has to be bailed out?
The bank, well, there's no other, money's going to come from somewhere, right? It's like the same analogy. Let me try to come up with an analogy of the,
because as a consumer, if I'm just banking with someone, right, I honestly can probably give two damns if the bank returns, as long as I get my money back.
Well, but here's the thing, right? So you're a consumer, you're a buyer, you're a home buyer. And you go into an offer with the expectation that, and I'm trying to make this up as we speak, right? So bear with me, right? So you're a homeowner and you're going in with the expectation that the seller, and the seller equals the seller and or the listing agent, right? The selling party is going to contribute 3% to the closing cost. That's the expectation that the buyer has going in. Yeah. Right? That the selling party is going to contribute 3% to the closing cost. Yeah. So when the listing agent presents that to the seller, who's going to, like, the seller could be like, okay, great, it's on you. You pay for it. You're a part of the selling party. I'm not paying for it. You pay for it. There's a disconnect in the communication, because the buyer has the expectation that this is what I'm going to get 3%.
Is being delivered, yeah.
And then the buyer gets the 3%. Great. The buyer's happy, right? So the buyer is the depositor. The buyer got the money back. Like, based on your example, right? Your depositor gets the money. The buyer, in the example I'm giving you, gets the 3%. Who pays for the 3%? The selling party.
Well.
And who's the selling party?
Let's clarify that, though.
That's right. That's my point exactly. That's my point exactly. We're going to clarify it. You see it?
Yeah, because where I'm going. Who's actually paying for it?
Exactly. Who is
the buyer? The buyer is paying for it technically, right? It's just the seller. Instead of the seller receiving it, the buyer's receiving it back from themselves. Does that make sense?
No, well, I mean, it does, but that's not where I'm going with it.
Okay. So
it's the selling party.
You're going with it.
So the selling party is, right now in this example, is made up of two people: the owner of the property and the listing agent. Somebody's going to pay for it. The buyer's going to get their 3%. So does it make a difference who pays for it? It's the selling party. But does it make a difference if the seller pays for it? It comes off from the seller's proceeds, or it comes off from the listing agent's proceeds? Is there a difference in both? 3% is 3%.
Yeah, exactly. The buyer doesn't care where it comes from.
Correct. The buyer is the depositor to the bank. We're
Mhm.
tying this to your question, to your original example,
Got it. Got it.
right? So
Okay.
the
Okay.
buyer is the buyer is
The
the depositor.
consumer
The consumer
doesn't care.
doesn't care. But what the money comes from, is there a difference? Is there a difference if the money comes from the seller proceeds or from the listing agent's proceeds? Is there a difference?
No. Right? There's absolutely no difference.
That's what the current administration has said. Just what you
Mhm.
said. There will be no cost to the taxpayer. So now
Mm.
think about analyze the question, right? The seller makes owes 200,000 and sells the house for 400,000. That's
Okay.
$200,000
Net.
proceeds from the sale,
Mhm.
right? The listing agent, I don't know, what's the going rate for a listing?
Let's say 6% total.
6%. There's a co-broker involved. They split the commission
3 and
50-50.
3.
Buying
Mhm.
broker gets 3%. Selling broker gets 3%. The buyer is going to get 3%. Seller pays 3% from his proceeds. The money comes from the seller's proceeds. The listing agent pays the 3% from his or her proceeds. How much money is the listing agent going to have left over?
Nothing.
Exactly. So is there a difference between where the money comes from? Does it impact the seller and the listing agent differently depending on who pays the money?
Mhm.
Right? I
Yeah.
mean, the selling party is giving the credit. So the buyer is like, oh, the seller is giving me the credit.
Sweet.
What a wonderful seller. But it
Mhm.
wasn't the
Mhm.
seller, it was the listing agent who did it.
Yeah.
The listing agent worked for free because he got a listing, he paid the buyer's commission, but the listing agent had to come up with the cash out of his or her commission
To
to pay for
cover
it.
the concession.
Similar concept. The government says, no, don't worry, we bail you out, even though it's not what the law says, it's not what happens. It's completely different and reverse and what happens. And they use it's too big to fail kind of, you know, line, comparing it to Bank of America, JB Morgan, or one of these big companies, right?
Mhm.
Which it's not. It's just some small bank in California that was just full of people who were startups and actually had a kind of a scam. I mean, I don't know about banking and regulations, and I'm sure it's not illegal, but it's kind of a scam. You set up startup businesses, you give money to a startup, joint venture. You say, okay, we'll give you the money, but you have to deposit the money into this account and this account only. That's what they did.
Mhm.
So they had all
Mhm.
this money because they had all these venture capitalists that they were all working together in cahoots, and they put the money in. They said, okay, we'll give you the money, we'll give you your startup, your venture capital, but you got to put it in here into this bank.
Mm.
That's part of what caused the same reaction, because the venture capitalists who sunk their money into these companies that were startups saw what was happening, and they called the companies and said, you better get my money out of that account right now because that bank is in trouble. And they all ran to get the money out, and they took out like 20 billion in less than 24 hours.
Yeah.
That's how that happened, because the VC guys were like, hey, get that money out of there. My money is in risk, get it out, because their money's in risk, right? That
Yeah, of course.
they're going to lose money, then they move and they do the stuff. So that was the entire dynamic. Is they said, we're going to print money. It's got to come from somewhere. It's not from thin air. So when they print money, the FDIC has an insurance,
Mhm.
and the FDIC insures depositors, right? That's what it's there for. Problem
Yeah.
is that's only 250,000, and they have a certain amount of, and they fund it from fees that they charge the banks, right? There's a fund for that, but they only
Mhm.
have like 25 billion in the fund, and Silicon Valley got 219 billion, so they're
It's insane. It's insane.
way short of, you know what I mean? Like, so where's the money come from? Well, we're going to print the money, right?
Mhm.
And the banks are going to, don't worry, Mr. American taxpayer, we got you. The banks are going to pay the fees. We're going to bail them out, but the banks are paying the fees. Sure. And that's great. That is what's going to happen, right? The FDIC is going to impose a higher fee on the banks, right? So,
Mhm.
this is totally made up. I have no idea what those
That
fees are.
position that they had void or had filled with someone who was more concerned about nature would did they revise that matter? Did they
Oh, well, they all got
fill that
fired.
position?
No, they all got fired. Well, so she wasn't hired for that position. She
Mhm.
was
She was just filling in
she
until.
filled in for that position, correct? Yeah.
Mhm,
She was doing that. She was risk manager in Europe of something,
mhm.
risk manager, but it was about the environment and the diversity and inclusion, and so in Europe, and then she somehow incorporated that here into again.
Doesn't make
There's,
sense.
there's nothing wrong with
But
that.
but they switched that up already, right?
Well, yeah, well, the bank is closed, so I mean they switched it up in the sense that the lady no longer has a job, but the decision is already made. It's a decision already made. You know what I mean? It's just you make these decisions in business that have impact. I mean, it's just look at Bud Light. What's going on with Bud Light, right?
I have no idea what's going on.
They decided they did a marketing campaign, and some people are not going. Some people are just not reacting well to it, and like their valuation is lost like 5 million. Like it's a crazy number that they've lost. Like all this in the past like couple of weeks. It's just been a massive kind of So, and I mean, it's based on decisions, right? At the corporate level, when you make decisions, I mean, you have to make this. I mean, it's business. I mean, it's hard to have the conversation. At least for me, it's very hard because I'm a very compartmental person. Like I'm very analytical, and things have to make sense to me in order for me to like conversate about it. You know what I mean? Like it has to make sense. If it doesn't make sense, like you see when we're talking about technology, like, I don't know what that is. Like,
yeah,
I can't have like it's just the amount of time it's going to take me to process all that data and try to figure out to have like a smart, intelligent conversation. I don't have the, you know what I mean? So it would take too long. So I'm like, all right, just you handle that technology part because it's not my thing. It's not that I just to spend my time trying to learn about it, to have a correlating conversation, it just takes too much because I'm not versed on it.
yeah.
It's kind of the just how it goes. But yeah, lost my train of thought. What was I getting on?
About the Bud Light situation.
When in business, when you make a decision in business, it has to be a business decision. Like you can't mix, you can't make business decisions and then try to be doing something else. Right? In the case of the Fed, or the risk manager for the bank, like let's
exactly
further, right? If your job is to be the risk manager for a bank and you manage the risks that the bank takes, that should be your only job. Like that should be your only focus.
Your focal point.
Because it's a very it's a very important thing. I mean, it's like if you I don't know, if you make I don't know, apple pies, right? And you have an apple pie factory, and the person in charge of purchasing
don't try to bake chocolates.
Well, the person in charge of purchasing forgets to buy the apples. And you have your whole production, you got everything ready to go, you got everything. And then go looking for the apples, and then where's the apples? Oh, but we got a whole bunch of cherries. That's great, but we're not a cherry pie maker, we're an apple pie maker. I mean, it's the same kind of, it sounds silly and dumb to make an example like that. But it's exactly what happened. That is exactly kind of they would looked at it. So they looked at something else, but that has effects, right? That has negative effects because it's a corporation and it's money involved. So the effects of that decision by that leader at that time, CEO or chief marketing officer or risk manager, in this case of the bank, whoever makes those decisions, if they make those decisions based on a set of criteria that are not really related to the subject matter at hand, the decisions might not be the best decisions, right? So the risk manager, I mean, she focused on the environment, wonderful, great thing to happen, but that necessarily did not put her in the best situation to make the best decision with $219 billion of other people's money.
Yeah.
She had, she had her eye on something else. So there's a lot of, that's what's kind of happening in the industry now. You're dealing with these type of decisions that are based on this perceived, notion that there's certain things that certain companies have to do, and if these companies don't do that, then they're not good companies. there's a big issue, like here in Florida, with ESGs.
ESGs, what's that?
Environmental, I think it's environmental social grade. It's something about how corporations and public companies.
Environmental, social, and corporate governance.
There you go. And it's a ranking that they get, and it's tied to their
Their contribution,
how they contribute to social justice and diversity and inclusion and the environment. All super valid and important things. Like that's 100%. Problem is that there's some companies. One very famous one is Blackstone. These are investment firms, right? So what these firms do is they take people's money, pensions, for example, and they manage those pension funds.
Funny thing, how our topic for today was supposed to be about the Ritz, and now you're bringing it around full circle.
There you go. So they invest the money, REITs being one of them, but they take the money of pension funds. Let's just talk about pension funds, right? So, I mean, what's a pension fund?
Essentially a fund. When you retire, you get access to those funds.
Got it. So think about this. Put yourself in the person's shoes, right? So you're a person who's about to retire, who's almost there, has been working for 20, 25 years, whatever, at the same place, which
gave your whole life up.
Give your whole life away. You got your plans, you got the numbers, you got the pension, you got Social Security, you got this, you have all these plans, right? This is how much I'm gonna make, right? This is what I'm expecting, my paycheck, I got my mortgage paid off, like this purpose. These people have their lives kind of quote unquote set. Then you take, the investment firm who's handling the pension fund for that person's company, and that person decides, like the risk manager from Silicon Valley, that he or she is going to focus on inclusion, diversity, and the environment. And then ESG it's a directive that companies have that they need to invest in funds that meet this ESG criteria. And I don't know what the criteria is, right? But it has to do with environment, diversity, and inclusion. I know that. So, and they take the funds, the money from the pension funds that this guy has been working for 25 years and his retirement's on, and they invest it into companies that promote this ESG notion. Right? So take Silicon Valley. It's a perfect example, right? So, so I'm a it's a bank. It's not a business, but it's a. I mean, you can.
It's a bank.
It applies, right? So I say I'm looking at where I'm going to put my money, or I'm going to deposit my money. And Silicon Valley, they were flying. They were doing really well. The deposits were high. The bank grew like exponentially. They were like a superstar, and their ESG scores were through the roof because they had all they didn't have a risk manager. They didn't think it was important enough. It was more important to have the lady in charge of inclusion and diversity in the environment. And boom, the ESG scores were through the roof. They were awesome. Like, this is my place. This is where I'm going to put my money into the bank. But then they forgot to do the risk manager part, and I lost the money. I mean, that's kind of
out of control.
It's insane. But because they're keeping an eye on this ESG score, right? But then the same example, right? I've been working for 20 years. I put my money into this Silicon Valley because it has and they're worried about ESG scores. They're not worried about protecting my money. And now my money's gone, and I'm retiring next year. Now I have my whole pension or half of my pension is gone. So I was going to get $2,500 a month, and now I'm going to get $1,200 a month. I mean, that's people's lives that you're messing with.
That's insane.
It's insane. And that's what happened. Like, that is a truth. Like, that could totally happen. That's not, I made up the whole story as I went along. But that could totally happen.
But it's real life. It has happened.
Well, of course it has. It's happening, and it's going to continue.
How many people do you see working at Publix, working, these jobs that are definitely not supplementing?
I have family members that they've been working at couple, and they've been working. She's been at one company for 20 plus years. He's been in another company for 20 plus years. 401k, they're doing their thing. You know, they each had close to $300,000 in their 401k. Now one has 75 and the other one has 150. And they're retiring, and you know, and one is 60 and the other one's 57.
My gosh.
Just like that.
Poof.
They didn't lose it all. They lost more.
I know, but the amount that they did lose, poof.
But and the worst part is that, you know, one of them is 60 and the other one's 57. And they want to retire at 65. Not happening. I had to kind of
that rate.
I saw, well, it's not happening. It's not happening.
I mean, they could invest.
But they're not going to get it back.
I mean, if they invest properly.
It doesn't matter how properly they invest. From 60 to 65, he's not going to get from almost 300 to almost 300 to 75. He's not going to get that back in 5 years.
I mean, no, if he invests, there are creative things you can do.
Yeah, for Warren Buffett, he can do that because he has the money. But this guy's been working for 20 years.
You can make there's a lot of wealth circling around these days,
yeah, bro. But you ain't
in less than 2 years.
Yeah, but you got to have the wealth to start. You got to have the money.
Well, you have to have the wealth of knowledge.
Come on, and you got to have the wealth of the coin, and you got to have the wealth of coin in your hands. You can't. I can have
really.
Oh yeah, man. I can have all the knowledge in the world. I have all the knowledge that I need. And if I don't have the money to invest, what's the point?
Do you remember the numbers you ran on that Golden Oak deal at the end of last year? The 17 million.
Oh yeah.
Do you know it hit the market a couple days ago?
It did?
Yeah. Hit the market at 19 million.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's insane.
So wealth is not unattainable, but again, you know, at that age.
Well, I'm not saying it's unattainable. That's not my conversation is not. But what I said was, you got to take the whole thing into context, right? This is a couple that has been working for 20 years, and
that's all they know.
They're just they're working. They're like most Americans. They're just regular, hardworking people. They get up every day, go to work, and come home and pay their. You know, they raise their kids. They're about to retire. They're regular people. They don't have the extra knowledge and the extra cash lying around to just start investing. Can you make money really fast? Absolutely. But you got to have, number one, you got to have the money, and you got to have the money to lose. Because when you invest like that to create, you gotta have the money to lose. You gotta be able to afford to lose that money. So it's a different ballgame for now. Those are the people that the venture capitalists that were in Silicon Valley, that had their money in Silicon Valley. Those are the people that got bailed out. The depositors that have the wealth and they have the money, they're the ones that got bailed out. Along with the startup business that, you know, had all the money from, you know, they got all this money from a venture capitalist, and they started up their company, and they're trying to, you know, make payroll next week, and their money was also tied up in there. So both sets of money were into this bank. So, and you can't stop. How do you pick? Well, you do and you don't. You know, you can't pick that. And that's the whole who's on first thing. That's kind of what the Secretary of the Treasury kind of alluded to with that whole who's on first thing. Because on one day she said yes, on the second day she said no, and the third day she said yes, and when she said yes, she kind of said, "We'll pick who we give the money to."
Yeah, exactly.
And then she realized, she said, "Okay, all right, you can't say that. Like, we can't tell the people that we can do it, but we can't tell people we're doing that." And they kind of backtracked it, and that's where the whole "who's on first thing" came.
Yeah,
but it's really, I mean, those decisions. So back to the ESG, right? If your strategy is, if you're a fund manager, the title that says what you are, right? You're a fund manager. You manage the fund. Therefore, if you manage a fund, the objective should be to make money with that fund. Right?
To create more money.
You know, if you manage a baseball team, your job should be to
win the
championship, right? But we switched. So now the baseball coach is, his or her job is to participate and to make sure everybody participates and feels included and welcome, and there's no winners and there's no losers, everybody wins.
Yeah.
So you have the kid that who's a natural athlete, you know, playing Little League, who's a natural athlete, and he's just he's just a natural. He hits the ball, he throws the ball, he runs, he's faster than everybody else, he hits better than everybody else, he catches everybody. You know what I mean? He's a natural athlete. Not the kid's fault. He's a natural athlete. And then you got the other kid who's a natural scientist.
Yeah.
Less about sports, and it's just he's having fun, and the butterflies are flying around, and he's turning around chasing the butterflies in left field. Both of those kids are real. Those are the both situation, and you need to focus on, well, you're going to win the game, so you win the game. They used to be like that, right? You used to get a championship trophy, and the last place they didn't really get a trophy, and didn't make the playoffs, but now the world changed, evolved, which is great. I mean, but it took away from, now we're focusing on the environment. Yes, it's wonderful, but people's money, if your job is to protect other people's money, you should protect other people's money, not, make decisions based on and risk their lives. So that's what's happening. I mean, that's what this whole sort of,
or livelihood,
with this, the way these companies invest funds, and the way the decisions they make with people's money. Again, REITs is that subject when we talk about that. I mean, that is what happens. I mean, you take your money, you invest it. They're the ones that decide what they're buying and what they're not buying. They're buying, and the funny thing is, right? So you have the media with housing. It's a perfect example. Right? On one side, you got the media saying there's a crash, doom, gloom, stay away from real estate. It's terrible. There's no bueno. Stay away from it. But on the other side, you got companies like Blackstone with these REITs that are investing billions and billions and billions. They're just buying up the property. What are they doing with it? What's going on? Is the market bad, or is the market not bad? Just like Warren Buffett. Okay.
It's not bad for those who have units. The monopoly board. It's good for the one who owns the properties. It's horrible for the ones who don't.
The one that's paying rent.
It's the same board.
You're throwing that dice, and you're trying not to land on that thing because the other guy's trying to land on it.
It's the same board.
That's how it is.
It's the same board.
I mean, and you take, having the same, the board, that's a perfect analogy. Like, it's both persons are playing on the same board. One wants to land on there, like praying to land on Park Ave, and the other one's like, oh no, please don't land on Park Ave. I don't have the money to pay that rent, and I can't buy it. That's real life. That's how it works, and to have and to not be aware of that, and to lose sight of that, and just make decisions based on other stuff that's important, but it's people's livelihood. That's what gets me. It's somebody's life. Just having somebody who depends on the Social Security check, on a retirement check. I've had that conversation in my lifetime with people, who just depend on that. That's all they have. Like, they're alone. They have no children. The children passed away. They're just people who are, older, retired, and alone, and they have a set of funds that's all they have. And if those funds don't come in, or prices increase, those funds are no longer enough, and there's just no way to come at from somewhere else, and they can't go do the side hustle.
Yeah,
they can't do they can't download the app and go
the creative finance, the creative investments, all that stuff.
Those are the people that you see at as a greeter, in a store, having to work, man. That's heartbreaking. That's just
it is.
And more people every day are in that situation, and unfortunately, more and more people are going to be looking at that situation.
Yeah, but that's what we're doing this for, is to enlighten the folks and bring them the value that is gonna alter that pathway. So with that said, next week we got a couple of changes that's gonna be happening. We got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then John Sepulveda is flying out to Colombia.
Yeah.
Yo, that Encanto, that soundtrack is one of my favorite
that's from Colombia,
favorite albums. I know.
And all the colorful stuff is based on real places that are in Colombia.
Real culture. Yeah. I bet. I figured they included the actual culture.
Oh yeah, no, and the places. Like there's one, like I've seen, I mean, it was just, but there's one place, like the colorful, like there's a lake, and there's a this that's all like real places in Colombia.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can't wait to go out there myself.
Maybe someday.
Um,
Absolutely, it'll be cool.
what do you look forward to most on that trip?
I'm gonna see my parents.
Okay,
You know, I'm gonna see family. It's just the family. I'm gonna see my parents, hang out with my parents.
because you're going to Medellin, right?
Medellin, yeah.
Um, did you guys grow up in like the urban part? Is Medellin all urban, or is there some suburbs in there?
No, Medellin is a city. It's the second largest city in Colombia. So
Okay.
it's a metropolitan. It's a very large city. And the city itself, it's I don't know, 700,000 people. But the metropolitan area, it's like 3 million people. It's very large. It's a very large
Okay.
area. Yeah. I mean, it's a
And you
city. It's
said
a full city.
you're gonna go see your parents. So you guys came into America and then they wound up going back permanently?
Yeah. So my parents are divorced.
Oh,
My
okay.
dad is remarried, and my mom is not. But they both retired and moved back to Colombia.
Oh, okay. Nice.
And part of the reason why I'm sort of so passionate about the subject, especially retirement, and I'm very passionate about that. It's like, my parents, they're the true story. Like, it's a true story. They came here, they left, another country, bad situation, migrated here, the whole process, got a job, didn't speak the language, came and and
Built up.
raised me, and whatever I am today is based on that. You know what I mean? It's just, and they finished working, they retired, not because they lost it, they Social Security. They never thought about it. Oh, Social Security, retirement, I'm good. 401k, they my mom did not have a job where she had a 401k. My dad did. He did some, invested some, lost a whole bunch of money right before the market, 2008. He retired after that, and he lost most of what he had in his 401k, which was very little, but he lost most of it. Got 20 grand or 25 grand, something is all you had left over in there. And so, well, they have Social Security, and they're not living on Social Security, so they no choice but to go back home. They're retired and that the exchange works, but they realized that when they were about to retire, oh my God, I can't do it. So it's an issue. I mean, it's not just them. It's just a lot of people, and most people, unfortunately, are in that kind of same similar boat. So, so we, came here, they worked and retired and went back home.
Yeah.
My mom lives in Medellin. My dad lives in Pereira, another city.
Oh, okay. And all right, what okay, so like the areas out there, what, is there a huge difference? Is it night and day between the wealthier class and the working class?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's like everything. I mean, it's much more marked. If you've done any travel in anywhere else in the world for that matter, but Latin America, I mean, if you see there's definitely, and Latin America is more, I mean, there's a high class, and there's really no middle class. Like here in America, we still have a little bit left of middle class. I mean, in Latin America, the middle class
the gap is increasing.
Yeah. I mean, in Latin America is it's much bigger, the gap. I mean, it's it's really upper middle class and high class, and then everybody else, because not even the middle class is struggling. And it's like everything, right? Every time there's a market thing, the rich get rich, the poor get poor. I mean, the rich get richer, the middle class become poor, and the poor get poor. That's sort of how that works.
Yeah. All right. Well, you're gonna be out there. I'm gonna be holding down the fort while you're gone as of the 20th. Tuesday is National Tax Day. That's where we're gonna be getting on the call with tax specialist Heidi Rodriguez and having a discussion based on the post that you did earlier in the week. The seven ways homeowners can save big.
Okay.
So with taxes. So pretty much it's gonna be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You'll be out of town, and then you'll be back just before May 10th.
Correct. Yeah. So May 3rd would be the the day I'm back to like be able to, and we'll
So
see.
we have a full week of the
We'll play
the
by ear.
anticipation.
We'll do we'll play by ear, and then we'll talk. We'll stay in contact. If there's anything newsworthy to kind of report,
Mm-hmm.
we'll do it.
All right, sounds good.
Even if it's a separate, and we include it into the day's thing, or we'll figure it out. If something worthy
Significant
comes
up.
where there should be, that warrants like an explanation, so we have it, right? So it doesn't sit there for like 2 weeks and then try to explain it when we come back, because it could be, things could, hopefully not, but a lot of things could happen. You know what I mean? So
No, I got you.
we'll play by ear. I'll
Alrighty then. So, any last thoughts before we let him go?
No, man, it's I can't believe it's been a month. That's true. I mean, I honestly, a month ago when we started kind of doing this, wow, so
You remember being concerned whether or not there was enough to talk about?
No, I mean, not really. I mean, it was never really too. We figured we chit chat a lot. If anything, we talk too much. Probably, hopefully we're not boring people, and they're listening to it. But that, I mean, that's the idea, right? It's just to have this data, this information there that people can at some point and utilize this, repurpose this material.
Correct.
Shorter bites that people can digest.
Offering insight and value and sharing it with our audiences.
I mean, I love doing this because the only way I can learn is the only way I'm learning something, and I know I'm learning something, is if I'm able to repeat it and teach it to somebody else.
Yeah.
So, hopefully you've learned something, a thing or two in these 20 episodes. And if that's,
oh no, I've definitely learned a lot of information. But the major thing I'm seeing is where the information needs to be applied, That's the biggest takeaway, is like, all right, knowing this data, having these insights, what does it matter if it's not being applied? So the application is key, because, a lot of people want to be, gourmet chefs, but they're taking short orders.
well, they want to take a pill.
So,
they want to take a magic pill and overnight, be like that. And I mean, if we think about it, right, and I haven't really thought about it with this perspective I'm about to say, but if you think about it, like the first day we did it, the title of the presentation was like, it's still time, you still have a little bit left, not much, but you still got a little bit of room, you can still make a decision.
mm-hmm.
And theoretically, if somebody listened, saw that first episode and was on the kind of cusp of should I buy, should I wait, and if they pulled the trigger and bought, they've made money.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee you 100%, if they actually that day or around that time they decided and they did what, they pulled the trigger, they're going to make money. And then by the same token, the people that have not listened to that, they're not going to lose money if they haven't bought a house.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not going to make as much.
Yeah.
That's really all it is. And they've another person has made the money, because the money is just an instrument. It
goes back to that monopoly board.
It goes back to the monopoly.
Somebody else is playing the game.
It's a zero-sum game. Somebody wins, somebody loses.
Yeah.
Money was made for people that know and obey its laws.
Mm-hmm.
That's the people that have money. Nobody else. They have to know and obey its laws. There's changes. There's certain things. The royals, right? They're born into the money. They have the money. They don't have to necessarily follow and obey the rules because they have so much of it. Right? Eventually, they could lose it all, but there's exceptions. But in general, money is made and reserved for people who know and obey its rules, and you have to know and obey them. You have to, in order to know them, you have to study them, and then you have to learn them, and then you have to not only learn them, but you have to apply them and utilize them.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge. I talk to people, that look at their credit, they want to buy a house, they have some issues, they have some debt. I want to buy a house. Okay, here's a plan. Here's a financial plan. Complete that. If you complete that, I'll give you a map of how to get out of the debt and how to be able to buy a house. Yes, send it over to me. I'm going to do it. 1 week. I haven't gone to it. I was really busy. Next week, oh, my kids are sick. The next week, oh, we went on vacation. The next week, oh, I did this. And it's real easy for people to make excuses.
It falls off the priority list.
Falls out of the play because
it seems unattainable.
Not only that, and unfortunately, humans are wired to gravitate towards pleasure, right? And to gravitate away from pain, right? And if you're going side by side, the gravitating towards pain, even though it's more appealing.
You mean towards pleasure?
Towards pleasure, even though it's more appealing, people don't react as strongly. People really react when they're faced with the possibility of a lot of pain. When their backs are against the wall and they can no longer go, that's when people like, oh crap, I can't, like, oh my God, I got to get food for my kids are going to starve. And they start working. And they pay the dad, they get the money, whatever people do, right? That's how we all do. We're all survivors like that, right? So we get out of that mode and we react until we get back into a little bit of comfort zone, and then we stop, right? And then it's you gravitate towards pleasure, gravitate away from pain. But the trigger is really the pain. Like people really act when the pain is inevitable.
Yeah, when you experience too much pain,
and you don't want any more. But unfortunately, if they started acting, gravitating towards pleasure early on, then perhaps the pain could be avoided, or some of the pain could be avoided. They don't. Unfortunately, just human nature is like, I'll get to it later. It's not painful enough. I mean, yeah,
exactly.
I live paycheck to paycheck, and I have,
some people are just pain freaks.
I mean, they don't know. Well, they get overwhelmed.
Yeah,
they get overwhelmed, and it's more painful to make the corrections. So it's less painful to stay where they're at. So they stay where they're at because it's more painful to make the corrections.
Yeah.
If I have to go, if I get my pleasure and joy out of buying the, $9 small coffee at, whatever coffee shop I go to in the morning every day, if I like that, I gravitate towards that pleasure more than the pain of not drinking, not spending the $9 for the small cup of coffee because I'm in debt, and let me just make coffee at home and bring it to the office. That people will go to it's easier to go spend the coffee than to make the coffee at home.
Yeah.
Whatever. Unfortunately, that's how the majority of people live their lives. And that's the pain. And then on top of that, they just don't have the information. They have misinformation.
Correct.
So they think they're doing the right thing. Well, because if you look at the news, don't buy a house is bad. House will crash. So the person that doesn't have the information is saying, ooh, I'm a savvy investor. I'm staying away from the market because it's going to crash. That's
what everybody's saying.
I'm going to pay rent.
It's on TV. Investor. It must be true.
It must be true. I mean, that is the state we live in. Unfortunately, So hopefully we can help some people along the way, and somebody find some sort of something of value from these chats, and starts a process. Nobody's going to change their life by just listening to us. That's not the thing. But hopefully somebody gets something that says, "Oh," and you start going down that path, and you start getting preparing yourself and putting yourself in a better position to succeed, and your family.
The way I see it is, if we can help in every episode, somebody can take one thing from something that we discussed and apply it in their lives, then I feel like we've fulfilled our purpose in this.
100%. And you know what could multiply that 10x? If that person that did some of that could share that with somebody else. And then you really start, hopefully
the compound, the positive compound effect.
Yeah, hopefully one little chip at a time. So we'll keep on fighting to get good.
Well, with that said, I'm Robert Kenneth Morillo, PA, broker associate with Compass Florida, license number BK3373543, episode 20 with John Sepulveda. John, let them know.
And MLS 1309244. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great weekend.